Hi, welcome to the Digital Pathology Place. I'm Alexandra Zhurav, and if this is your first time here, please consider subscribing. This video is a recording of a podcast interview I did with Chait Kondragunta. Chait is the CEO of Aira Matrix. Aira Matrix is an Indian-based image analysis software company providing solutions for preclinical and clinical pathology, as well as other areas of life sciences. So have a listen, and I hope you'll enjoy. So today, my podcast guest is Chait Kondragunta from Aira Matrix from India. Welcome, Chait. How are you?
I'm very good, Alexandra. How are you?
Good. Thank you for joining me. And let's start with introducing you to the listeners. What's your background and what is your company?
Okay. Well, thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure to talking to you and through you to your list. So my background is a little bit different, probably, from most of your other guests.
That's good.
I do not have a pathology or any kind of hair background to start with. I'm an engineer. I have a couple of degrees in electrical and computer engineering, and way back in the day, and I'm probably dating myself here, about 20 years back or so, I worked on then an emerging field of neural networks, which is in some way a precursor to artificial intelligence and all techniques that we see now. But in those days, it was much more theoretical, and then because we did not have the kind of computing power and those type of things available, that kind of naturally died away, that area, for a little while. And so I moved on to doing other things, and finally ended up starting my own company in big data analytics, and we worked in that area in the US for a long time.
That was a different company. It's not.
That was a completely different company.
Aira Matrix.
In fact, it was not even in the medical or healthcare area. It was actually more in the financial services area. But that is where I started reapplying, my old sort of neural networks, artificial intelligence skills, now with the advantage of having new technology and new computing infrastructure available, so we could do some of the things there. And that's how I sort of re-entered into the area of artificial intelligence and analytics. But all along, when I was even working in that other company, I thought healthcare and the medical sciences side of things would be a very good thing to work on in terms of artificial intelligence. And a couple of years back, I had the opportunity to come in and be the CEO for Aira Matrix. And so I moved from the US to India to be part of Aira Matrix. Aira Matrix itself is a company that's been around for about 7 years now. And it's based in Mumbai, India. And it's about, at this point, 60 odd people. 85% of the workforce is either people with technology backgrounds or pathology backgrounds or doctors, physicians, those type of, so fairly advanced degrees. More than half of the company has either a master's or a doctorate. So a highly educated intellectual workforce, and so that really keeps me motivated as well in terms of the challenges and working with it. And it's a real pleasure to be applying artificial intelligence, or at least advanced computing techniques, to the area of medical image analysis, which is what we do.
So you say you're in Mumbai, India. You're the first person from India, first company from India that I'm interviewing. So maybe you can briefly tell me about the digital pathology market in India. I mean, everybody, sure. At least on social media, you see plenty of US representatives, people from Finland, but right. You're the first person from India that I'm talking to.
Okay. Well, being a bit of a newcomer to this area myself, maybe I have the the luxury in a way of having a slightly different perspective, since I've kind of grown up in this field, and so maybe that gives me a fresh perspective as well. But one of the things that I would characterize digital pathology is digital pathology as a general field, and not to generalize it too much, but we're probably about 10 to 15 years behind where radiology was, let's say. So in some way, digital radiology or all the techniques that are being applied in radiology are a precursor or some kind of a rough pathway to where pathology is or is going. Part of the reason, I think, is actually economic in some sense. Digitizing pathology or pathology data is not that easy compared to, let's say, radiology was. And so it's taken a little while for technology to catch up to even just digitize images to start with, and digitize them to a standard where, pathologists today can be persuaded to maybe move away from the microscope. I doubt even 7-8 years back if there was going to be a critical mass of pathologists who would be willing to do that. That's come about now. The price of equipment, as you know, is, and I'm talking about scanners and those type of things, is still pretty expensive, even in a first world type setting. So, and obviously in a place like India, that tends to be a far more of a serious buying decision for an organization, right? Whether it's a pharmaceutical company or a hospital or a lab, they will need to think about that. Having said that, I've seen this change as well in the last couple of years, where more and more organizations in India are investing in the digital infrastructure side of things in terms of pathology. It could be scanners, it could be camera-mounted microscopes, a variety of such approaches are being followed, and so that's quite heartening. So those barriers, I think, are coming down day by day. Both from an economic perspective and also because more and more pathologists are asking for or are more comfortable with, saying, digital pathology is the future. So they need to either adopt it or have already been trained into it. And so there is that natural pressure that comes on organizations as well to adapt to that. And so that's happening. And obviously, companies like us that supply products and services to the digital pathology users, in that sense, are net beneficiaries, in some way.
Actually, now that you say that, I am in contact with the Indian Society of Toxicologic Pathology, and we're going to be doing a joint webinar together soon. So it's spreading all over the world, digital pathology.
Right.
Okay. So you say Aira Matrix is providing both products and services in the space of digital image analysis.
Right.
Can you tell a little bit more in detail what the products are and what the services are?
Sure. We started off as a pure product company, which I think you'll see that as you look at AI-based digital pathology companies, most, if not all, are product-based companies, because almost all of them try to identify a particular problem to solve and then build a product to that. It could be an oncology problem. It could be a particular identifying a particular class of biomarkers, whatever it is. Those type of things. It's identifying a particular problem and then building a product to it. And that's how we started off as well. But along the way, I think we realized, this field is so vast, and in some way, even defining a particular problem is, in the sense of having a ready-made, off-the-shelf product all the time, is very hard. So, which is where we've gradually even adopted a services model to go with the product model, where it could be that we have a certain set of techniques, a certain amount of experience or expertise in building products to a particular need, but these products are building blocks to deliver a much more customized solution. And so that's where the services side of thing comes in, and that's more a function of we have products in our portfolio which are quite good, and clients are using them, but that same product is used quite differently among different clients, and the demands are a little bit different, where it almost then becomes a customized solution anyway. So, it's a feedback from the clients that has made us realize that we need to have a sort of a services mentality as well in terms of that customization. But it's not building something from totally from scratch every time, because that tends to be too expensive and time consuming. And it's quite frankly a big risk for a client to just say, okay, here's a blue sky project and let's figure out a services sort of contract to deliver that. So I don't think the area of digital pathology is where is at the point where companies are willing to make that bet on an ad hoc basis. So if you can show them something that's at least semi-proven and is in the neighborhood of the problem that they're trying to, sort of solve for, then we can go that last mile in terms of completing that sort of customization.
But you can still buy the product and try to do it yourself. But
sure.
At the same time, in your company, there is a team of people who can, using the same product, build a customized solution.
That's right. Yeah. The other thing that we do emphasize quite a bit and is in some way, I like to call it the sort of the secret that nobody wants to talk about in digital pathology, or AI in digital pathology, if you will, is the amount of time it takes to execute an algorithm. And I'm not even talking about the training and the testing and developing the algorithm, but after an algorithm is developed in a real world setting, how long does it take to get a result out? And sometimes, depending on obviously the size of the tissue and those kind of things, it could run, 30 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours, whatever. So, and when we talk about products and automated solutions, I mean, unless somebody mentions this, nobody's thinking of, waiting for 2 hours for an output to come. I mean, this is not like some mainframe computer from 40 years back, right? Where you're putting in something and then it's coming up slowly.
Sure.
So that is where we try to emphasize, and have had a separate team to try and sort of have performance computing on the productizing the AI algorithms, if you will, so that it's at least reasonable in terms of the time it takes for a pathologist to expect an output and those type of things. So, and that itself can take a significant amount of time and resources as well, to do that. Because as you said, there are a lot of DIY AI tools available for pathologists today. Even we have some of those in our portfolio. Two things come from that. One, they're okay in terms of getting the concepts across to pathologists who more often than not are obviously not trained to be computer engineers. So great. So giving them some kind of a learning aid or tool, that's great to do that. But then do pathologists then have the patience to input thousands of data points in a sense to make that algorithm really robust, so that they can. So that tool in that sense, DIY tool in that sense, becomes an interesting one, or a one-off for a very limited application for quite often for the needs of one pathologist as opposed to his or her organization.
Okay.
So that's one. And then on top of it, like I said, could you then make it into something that's scalable across, with faster turnaround times and those kind of things in terms of the output. And that's where I think not just us probably, but even other companies spend a fair amount of time developing that expertise to deliver that type of solution to the end client.
So Aira Matrix started as a digital pathology company, or did it transition from something?
No, we were always a digital pathology company, which is a little unusual. If you think about, 7 years back, there was a team here in India that said, we will do digital pathology, irrespective of the fact the barriers to entry to digital pathology are quite expensive. So we've always been a digital pathology company. The one key difference over the years for us in our sort of metamorphosis has been, we started off exclusively in the preclinical area.
Okay.
So we only worked with animal tissues for the most part, and it's only in the last couple of years that we now have expanded our portfolio, if you will, where we work also human tissues and working on clinical problems, if you will, in the medical the clinical outcomes side of things.
Mm-hmm.
But by and large, we did work first in the preclinical, particularly in toxicology testing, for preclinical drug candidates and those kind of things. So that's where most of our work was.
This is indeed unusual because most of the companies, especially here in the US, they start or come from the clinical area and want to go into regulated solutions, into primary diagnosis. This is where the first Philips system was approved as well, so that was a big breakthrough. Yep. Very few companies doing toxpath work. So yeah, that is a differentiator.
I mean, our flagship product on that has been in the toxpath area, and in some way the genesis for Aira Matrix has been that it takes X number of months for a preclinical study to be completed because of the thousands of slides that need to go through the toxicology study side of things, and so there's that, multiple species, probably all of those kind of things. And how do you separate normal from not normal among these 3,000, 4,000 slides that typically make up a tox study? And that's where we've developed the first product, which is to say you can input in a batch or a study, and then at least separate out the normal from not normal for Vistar rat. That's what we worked on. So that helped us in some way get a pretty good understanding of pretty much all 50 organs or 50 plus organs of a Vistar rat, which then allowed us to then go deeper into an organ in terms of looking at histomorphometry models or any of those type of things as well, and develop more organ specific or disease specific models as well, which then have another set of clients, not just the toxpath studies side of things. So that's been sort of the genesis in terms of how we developed from being a pure toxicology study company to then developing a set of other preclinical type of products, and then we moved on now into the clinical space as well. But so right now those are our three main verticals, if you will, in under pathology.
Mm-hmm. But why was it pathology in the first place? Why did the company decide to work in this area, especially you say 7 years ago, where nobody could predict how it's going to go, especially in India?
Right. I think in some way we were given that direction, if you will, because the company was formed with that idea. The main funders of the company came from the pharma industry, where as they developed drug candidates, they really lived this problem. Mm-hmm. And given that in a tox study, there's 80% of the slides are normal, but which 80% and that kind of thing. So could there be some way of reasonably classifying this so that you can free up the pathologists to do more detailed work on the 20% that actually matters? So that's where the company was first formed, with that as a research project. Mm-hmm. And so obviously in some way that's a never-ending problem. So yes, we're working on Vistar rat, well. And we're doing 50 organs in the Vistar rat, but you can go much deeper in terms of the kind of abnormalities you will see, or the test article related findings and all of those type of things. You can go across species. So we continue to develop that product. We work with clients on those, but at the same time we get a lot of feedback from that. And so I think in some way the epiphany was, this is a much more complex project than what people thought of and started off 7 years back.
That's why I wanted to ask when you said, differentiating normal from abnormal. My first thought was, how long did it take you to sort it out, and how much effort you still need to put in it?
In some way, it's still going on, right? That's what I was saying. So we, I think we are obviously with every day we are far more confident, and with every day we have a better solution than we did yesterday, and because it's a never-ending thing also in some way. We get to the point where clients are satisfied in some way for their particular kind of studies or for a particular implementation. they're okay with that, and then they're using it now. That's been in some way we're also lucky to have a set of clients who are willing to work with us to continue to develop this product, because I think just like you said, I think people realize the complexity of this, and so they appreciate the effort we are putting in terms of the complexity of this product, and so are also, because they live complexity themselves, they're happy for any kind of solution that comes in there that helps, and so we've been lucky in that sense as well to have a very cooperative set of essentially development partners.
Mm-hmm. So you said in general your customers would be a pharma industry, now some clinical organizations like hospitals. And what about this? So could you tell us about some particular solutions that you developed for each category of your clients, to give a little bit more tangible examples?
Sure. In the toxpath area, like I just said, we talked about this sort of tissue triaging, if you will, between normal and not normal kind of thing. That's one. Another one that we have worked on and which we're quite proud of is identifying the 14 different stages of spermatogenesis in like rat testes.
Okay.
That normally takes like one single slide takes a few days, if not a couple of weeks, for a pathologist to do. And quite often you find other indicative solutions are being employed as opposed to the direct, classification of the stages of spermatogenesis. That's a fairly complex problem, looking at all the various seminiferous tubules and identifying how it works. So we've spent a fair amount of time on that and have excellent results on that side, where in a matter of minutes you can identify and classify actually the 14 different stages of a rat testis. So to the point where now we've kind of proven that out, and certainly have publications on that, and have now moved on to working on other species as well on spermatogenesis.
This is amazing. This is like one of the problems that when you talk about it in the toxpath world, you're like even afraid to touch it with the eye because you're afraid of the complexity of
I
this
believe
thing.
It's the problem that pathologists try to avoid.
Yes. Yeah, one of these that if you can avoid it, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. What about the clinical space?
In the clinical side, we are right now focusing a lot more on prostate cancer. So that's kind of where a lot of our work is. One of the things about prostate cancer that we've kind of looked at and is it's a disease that in the past people died with as opposed to died from. Because life expectancy was a little bit lower in the past, and so you died from some other condition. But with the increase in life expectancy now, prostate cancer is also now a disease that people could die from. So in some way that has there was always a fair amount of interest in prostate cancer, but you're now seeing a lot more different approaches to it. One of the things that surprised us when we looked into this area was almost everyone is focused only on Gleason grading and nothing else, which is, yes, it's useful, it's important, but there are 10, 12 other parameters that a physician needs to consider, not just the Gleason grade, in terms of the course of action with the patient. So, and quite often we're finding that, you also need to include multiple modalities here. So, NP-MRI kind of images, all over the volumetric construction of how far the cancer has spread, these type of things. So, which are all fairly complex problems from an AI perspective, but nobody's been attempting those. So that's where we have looked to go further than Gleason grading, and have tied up with a few collaborators, including people from the NHS in the UK, to work on this. And then we're quite excited about the work we're doing there. In general, our approach on all of these things has been, first look at the sort of the screening side of things, then look at the grading side of things, and then look at the predictive side of things. So if you
like a
will,
funnel
at least then
approach
is the screening part of it, and then you still need to do two more major stages, each of which has several obviously important stages within it. So that's kind of the things that we're doing. Same thing. Some are going to work on the pancreas. Some are going to work on carcinoma. So in general, that's been our approach. Even with preclinical side of things, if you think of our normal, not normal kind of thing as doing the screening and then doing the sort of classification side of thing into normal, not normal, we now want to take it further and say, okay, what's the predictive aspect of this? The pharma industry, to some extent, is built on the notion of what are the chances for a drug candidate to succeed, right? And that's how you go for those 10, 12 years in terms of playing, in a sense, those odds. What are the chances for something to succeed to get to the next stage? We are asking ourselves the question, could we predict failure and predict it quicker, so that resources can be redeployed for something more productive or more chances of being more successful? Could we, from, for example, a 1 month or a 3 month tox study, predict failure for a longer study or in a human trial phase and those type of things? And if we can provide that answer early enough, that's a huge boon.
That saves kind of a lot of money and time.
The drug development effort. Yeah. So we feel we have the tools to do that, given that, like I said, somehow we chanced or got into normal, not normal in some way, or that was given to us. And somehow, since we spent a fair number of years doing it, we have some of the infrastructure or the learning to be able to then take it to this prediction side of things. And so that's kind of the next challenge for us. So this prediction side of things, whether it's on the clinical side or on the preclinical side.
And from the technical side, how is your solution deployed? Is it something installed on the computer, or is it data that you send to your company? What's the framework?
Yeah, we almost never look to have data come to us. Having said that, we have a lot of clients who prefer to send their data to us as opposed to putting it on a AWS server or anything like that. But that's more an exception, because they prefer to do that. In general, we either deploy our solution locally with the client or on the cloud, AWS, Azure, something like that, which then, a client has an instance of that. And then they work on it themselves, not the least because there is a decent amount of customization that needs to be done to meet a particular client standards and that kind of thing. So almost always it is some version of a client-specific installation, whether that's on their own infrastructure or on a specific cloud platform for them. So then generally that's what we do. Now, there are a couple of solutions like this DIY for pathologists in terms of building their own AI solutions, which typically only work for individual pathologists, like I was mentioning before. Those can be deployed on a computer type platform as well, but that's a very small part of our
Okay, so how do you innovate? What guides your innovation? What guides where the company goes next?
Some of it is actually driven by feedback from clients. At least half of it is driven by feedback from clients in terms of, as we present something and we work with them, then there's a certain ask or, a dialogue that happens which says, can you guys think of this or can you do something like this? So some of that comes from there. The other part, I think, to some extent, and it might feel strange to say when I talk about the organizational DNA when we're only like a 7-year-old company, but to some extent because we're tuned to, we've been founded with the idea of solving a very complex problem. So we kind of, I think the DNA of the company is one to take complex problems and try to solve them, as opposed to a single point solution. So even prostate carcinoma, for that matter. We're not just happy with having a very good Gleason grading solution, because that's a single point solution. There are at least a dozen more points, to think about in terms of a complete prostate carcinoma, AI-based prostate carcinoma solution that will help a physician. So so I think we are wired to think in terms of complex problems and trying to solve them, and that's where some of the innovation comes from that as well, in terms of looking through what is somebody else doing here, or what is the state of the art today in terms of this thing, and if we feel that it's inadequate in terms of the full extent of the problem, then that's an area that we feel that we can go and make a difference. Not the least because, we're a reasonably sized AI digital pathology company. There are not that many 60 plus person AI digital pathology companies in the world. And, so there's that. And like I said, because of maybe an advantage of geography as well to some extent, we're able to attract really good talent, like I said, both from engineering, computer science, as well as from the life sciences field to come in, people with advanced degrees. And so there's a critical mass of resources, or a very nice ecosystem that works. That's well, these days working from home, but before that they were all within walls.
Yeah. Yeah. So that you said about the scientific or the medical side of the problem where the clients drive you. What about the technological side? How do you assure that you stay on top of the new technologies, and how do you figure out which could be applicable to pathology?
Yeah, we from obviously there's a culture of doing that, given that most of the employee base comes with either postgraduate or doctorates and those kind of things. So there's a culture of research already sort of embedded in all of us. But on top of that, we actively encourage people to participate in seminars and global. The one advantage right now is because AI and pathology is also such a reasonably hot area that any given day, there's always a challenge available for you to participate and measure yourself against the best in the world. And so we do that. Now, we regularly encourage our, all of our to participate in these type of global challenges. And we have regularly been winning, those as well, or placing high, or getting our pure technology papers accepted in prestigious conferences and that kind of thing as well. So that I think helps people prove themselves, maybe to some extent because we are not in the US and we're not in Europe, but we're in India. And it's a slightly weird statistic for us, but 95% of our clients are all outside India. And even that 5% has been very recent for us. So we are one of those companies which actually didn't have any clients in our own home base. All of our clients are either leading pharmaceutical companies or hospitals or whatever it is, either in the US or Japan or Europe. So in some way that has probably even spurs the team to kind of keep proving themselves, in other public forum like conferences and competitions and that type of thing.
That's what I wanted to ask as well, because you were sometime in the US and then you went to India, and then you still service US clients and international clients with
I wasn't when I moved to India, I thought I didn't expect to be going back to the US every month, which was kind of what happened. Thankfully not in the last 4 or 5 months now, but before that.
Yeah, I guess it's international, and now it's digital, so you can work for everywhere from anywhere. So
in some way, not that one thinks of this as a terribly good silver lining, but to some extent, this whole COVID thing has, I think, forced digitization and forced this sort of working from a remote location thing on all of us, almost like a step function, if you will. In the back of our heads, we all knew that this is how we would be working X years from now.
Mm-hmm.
It just happened to become now.
Definitely, definitely the change has been accelerated. And I think it was not a change because of any like technical limitations. It was mostly the mentality of going to work every day and people being afraid that if they don't go to work, they're not going to work. Well, you still have to do your job.
Right. Yeah.
That's what you get paid for. So yeah, very much an accelerator for telepathology. Also the regulatory agencies here in the US loosened up the regulations for this time of the pandemic.
That's right. Yeah, we've seen some of that in some way coming to us as well in terms of analysis of the lungs, some kind of histomorphometry models there, and pulmonary fibrosis or those type of things as well. So I mean that's I suppose a natural function of what companies, pharmaceutical companies, are looking at currently, and so obviously CROs. I'm sure you're seeing a lot more inbound calls on that side of things, and in some way we are after the CRO in that sense, in that value chain. So we're also seeing some of that as well.
Yeah, definitely. This is the priority right now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you so much for telling me about Aira Matrix, about what you do. And I definitely want to link in the show notes the publication or the information about the staging of the testicular staging.
Sure.
I want to put this in the show notes for all my ToxPath colleagues to read about.
Very good. Yeah, looking forward to showcasing that as and when we get back into the conference side of things. Yeah.
Before we finish, where can the listeners find you online?
Well, airamatrix.com, and obviously LinkedIn, and we the usual social media things. Anything with an Aira Matrix, AIRA, and then the Matrix handle, you will find us easily.
Okay, I'm gonna link that in the show notes again. Thank you so much, and have a great day.
Thank you. You too, and stay safe. Take care.
I will. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. For more great digital pathology resources, visit the Digital Pathology Consulting website and subscribe to our newsletter on digitalpathologyconsulting.com. After subscribing, you will get access to the free annotation guidelines, which will help you annotate slides consistently in all your digital pathology projects. Talk to you in the next episode.